ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is very central to our lives, and especially in the situation that we are in. For example, the fires that have happened in LA in this week alone. And this topic is the topic of risk. And risk is something that is written for you and me. So in this short khutbah, we're going to talk about what is risk in the Islamic sense, what does risk mean literally in Arabic, and what is it in the Islamic sense, and some tips for increasing the risk. So risk is really, if you look at it at a high level, any kind of sustenance, any kind of provision. And when most people think of risk, they think of it as money. But risk is not money alone. Risk is also your health. Risk is also your family. Risk is your parents. Risk are your children. Risk is the peace of mind that you have. And so on. There are many, many variants of risk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. Your risk is in the skies. It's in the heavens. And just like the Quran is in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, similarly your risk and my risk, how long we are going to live, how much money we are going to make, everything is written. وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. And also Allah says, you will have what you are promised. Which means, you and I will not die until we have had that last morsel of food. You and I will not die until our risk is complete in this dunya. And risk is also not limited to this dunya. For the non-Muslim, they just think of risk in this dunya. For the Muslim, we think of risk both in this dunya and the hereafter. We have to balance the two. And that's the other thing I want to emphasize in this khutbah. Risk, by the way, in different forms occurs more than 128 times in the Quran. So more than 128 times in the Quran. And so you can understand every time it is used, Allah kind of puts a reference that it is coming from me. It's coming from Him. It's not coming from you or I. And you might say that, well, my risk is coming from my parents. My risk is coming from my employer. And so on. Allah has made them a medium. The risk ultimately is from Allah and He controls it. And your risk is also written for you, right? You and I cannot change. There are certain aspects of risk that we have control over. Certain aspects of risk we do not have control over. And I'm going to talk about that in this khutbah. Allah also says, قُلْ مَنْ يَرْزُقْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Again, say your risk is coming. Like who provides for your risk? From the skies. So every time Allah tries to link it to Himself. It is not you and I who are responsible for our risk. We make the effort, we make our intention, we depend on Him, and He is the one who gives you results. And then He continues, أَمَّنْ يَمْلِكُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَمَنْ يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. It is the same being who owns your hearing and your sight. Just like Allah, you and I are not in control of our hearing and our sight. Allah blesses us with those abilities. But some people cannot hear, some people cannot see. Similarly, Allah says He is the one who gives you life and gives you death. And He gives you, the dead are brought back to life, just like we were dead, and then we were brought to life, and then we will be dead again, and then we brought back to life. And He is the one who gives life and brings death. So, in this khutbah again, as I said, we're going to talk about some practical tips. But before I get there, as I said, there's more than 100 references in the Quran of risk. There is a very explicit hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, which talks about how your and my risk is written. The day before we were born, not the day we were born, even before we were born, before we came into this world. Narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar, he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, each of you is collected in the womb of your mother for 40 days as a sperm drop, as kind of a piece of sperm. For the next 40 days, you become a clot or an alaq. And for the third 40 days, you become a piece of flesh which is like formed or unformed. So, this period of 120 days or 4 months is when we go through these transitions, and until that point, we don't even have a roof. So, we don't even exist at that point. And at 120 days, after those 3 stages that Allah talks about, that is when Allah sends an angel and orders him to write 4 things for us. So, pause here. The first phase, and this is, if you think, just imagine this, like you are basically an unformed piece of matter until 120 days. In different forms. It is going through a form where you cannot even make out what this person is going to look like. What is the gender of this person? You don't even know anything. At that point, at 120 days, the angel comes and writes 4 things. What are those 4 things? His provision, his risk. Second thing, his age, when he will pass away, at what age will he pass away. Third and fourth things are whether this person will be of the righteous or whether this person will be of the wretched. The righteous and wretched refers to whether this person will be a mu'min, follows the commands of Allah, or this person will be on the other side. And at that point, Allah also asks the angels to blow the soul into this person. And at that point is when a risk is written. Now, one thing that you may think from this is, well, if everything is written for me, then what is the effort, what is the value of my effort in this world? That is not the correct understanding. The correct understanding is, yes, your risk is written, but Allah is, think of it as I can give you an example of a time machine, right? Allah knows everything, your past, your future. Allah also knows what is going to happen in the future, what decisions you're going to make in the future. So, think of it as, Allah will go into a time machine, see what exactly you're going to be doing, and then come back and write it. And that is the qadr of Allah. That is the fitrah of the human being. Before Allah creates something, He writes it down. And so, risk, the decisions that we have, some things, as I said, are out of our control. But the decisions we make, how we react to it, are in our control. Right? And that is where third and fourth come in. The wretched and the blessed, the person who is going to be of the righteous and the person who is going to be on the other side, those are our decisions. Right? Whereas your risk and your lifespan is written for you. So, risk, in the Arabic language, risk is anything that brings benefit to you. And that is why thinking of risk as only money is flawed. It is not only money, it is also your health and so many other things. So, and risk can come in different ways. Your intelligence, for example, your looks, right? Your peace of mind, and so on. So, Quran and Sunnah have talked about risk in so many ways, right? And every single time it is looking at risk from a different perspective. But risk, as I said, is more than just money. So I've listed down a few things. I want you to, as I'm going through this list, I want you to think about it in your own life. These also count as risk. Peace and tranquility of your mind. Peace of heart. That again is something that you cannot describe. You have to experience it. Purity of the heart, or ikhlas, or sincerity. Clarity of the mind. How many of us know of people, or have seen people, or read about people who cannot even think clearly, for whatever reason? Health, being healthy and not being in a hospital, and not having to have somebody else take care of ourselves. Isn't that part of risk? Mental health, being smart and being able to make decisions. Caring and loving parents, right? How much will you pay for that? Having parents that are loving and caring, right? Isn't that part of risk? doesn't that bring you benefit both in this world and the next world? And that is the Islamic perspective as well. When you look at risk in this world as well as the next world. Having a spouse that loves you and is righteous, that is also part of risk. Having friends who are genuine and who can guide you and correct you when you're on the wrong path, that's also part of risk. Having Iman, probably the number one thing in risk, even more than money or health, is Iman. If you don't have Iman, all of these things do not mean much. And of course, natural respect of people for you. If people look up to you, or if people respect you when they meet you, that is also part of risk. And the last one I'm saying here is, well, the two more things. Knowledge and wisdom, that also is a risk that only Allah gives. And the last one is money or wealth, the way we know it, right? Yes, that is also part of risk, but I want to expand our viewpoint. Risk is a lot bigger than this. So in the short time that I have, I'm just going to give you a short example of two brothers. One brother is very lazy, and the other brother is hardworking and wants to go out and earn risk. One brother says, I'm going to just sit at home and wait for risk to come to me. The other person says, no, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to work and earn my risk. Both of them will get what they deserve, or what is written for them. Now, the person who is hardworking, in this example I'm going to give you, is, imagine he goes out and buys some apples. Let's say he got 20 apples. He comes home and he feels his other brother, who is lazy, is still at home. And he says, okay, let me give him an apple from mine. So he has 19 and he gives one to his brother. And so the brother who was lazy, he said, see, I told you, risk is going to come to me. And the brother who actually worked for these apples, he said, you're wrong. You only got it because I gave it to you. The answer is, so the question is, which one of them is right? The answer the scholars have said is, both are right, but partially right. Yes, both of them got the risk that was written for them. But we all know the risk, effort that you make gives you rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the difference the scholars said is in these two is they both got what they deserved or what was written for them, but the person who made the effort, the hardworking one, got the extra reward of working hard and placing tawakkul in Allah. The other thing the scholars said is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the upper hand is better than the lower hand. So you all want to be in a situation where you are giving, not taking. And if you are working hard, if you're trying to go out, and that's what Allah says, even in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, what does He say after coming back to, He says, come to Jumu'ah, give up your work. But then He says, go back and earn your risk. Earn from the fadl of Allah. So in the hereafter, your risk, of course, this person, both of them got what was written for them. But if you work hard, chances of you getting your risk being higher is definitely higher. Right? And you're earning the hereafter. Whereas this other person is just getting what was written for him. He didn't earn the reward of the hereafter. And this is why it is so important for us to be very careful where our risk is coming from. Whether it's coming from a halal source or a haram source. No matter what you do, your risk is not going to change. If you're earning through a haram source, you're not going to earn more than what was written for you. If you had done a halal source, you would have earned the same amount. But what have you done to yourself? If you're earning through a haram source, your risk didn't change. It was constant, it was written for you. But you earned sins, which are going to be hurtful to you in the next life. And that is why a Muslim tries to balance. So, I'm going to conclude by 5 practical tips for increasing risk. The very first one. And again, risk, think of risk as more than money. The first one is, get closer to Allah in the ways that He has told us in the Quran and the Sunnah. By following His orders, by following things that He has asked us to do. Allah says, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. He will make a way out for you. And He continues in this, and He says, وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. And He will make a way out of you, and He will provide you from sources that you cannot even imagine. But what does it need? It needs taqwa in your heart. It needs you to turn to Allah. So that's the first one. Second is be optimistic. Optimistic and avoiding procrastination and working hard is a part of Islam. Set goals. Plan out your life. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that there is a lot of blessing in the early hours of the morning, for example. Take advantage of that. What you can achieve in the early couple of hours in the day will take you probably 6 hours in the busy part of the day. So use that time. Third, have tawakkul in Allah. Trust Allah in all matters. But again, tie your camel. Remember to tie your camel. What did Umar radiallahu anhu do when he saw somebody, a Sahabi was sitting in his masjid, and he asked him, at a time when it was not time for Salah, and he said, what are you doing here? And he said that I'm waiting for rizq. Allah will give me rizq when it comes. What did Umar do? Umar did the Umar treatment. He brought out his stick. He said, no, that is not what Allah means. Make the effort, be like the birds. The birds fly out in the morning and they come back to their nest with their stomach full. Be like those birds. Birds don't sit in their nest the whole day. The fourth point is connecting family ties. There's a very explicit hadith in the Prophet ﷺ where he said, whoever loves that he be granted more wealth and more risk, and that is life be prolonged. Both are risk, right? Getting more wealth as well as your life getting prolonged. He said he should keep good relations with his family, which is kids and kin. The fifth one, shukr. The more gratitude you have towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what He has given you, the more He will increase. And the sixth one, last one, is there's so many du'as. So many du'as that the Prophet ﷺ made. It's there in the Quran, it's there in the Hadith, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, or even the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned, make dua through these. So this is an example. Allahumma ghfirli zambi. Oh Allah, forgive my sins. Wasili fi dari. Oh Allah, expand my provisioning, or expand my dari, which is your house, or widen my home. Wabarikli fi rizqi, and increase my risk. And there are so many others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from these reminders and to remember always risk is a lot more than just money, and always turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in gratitude and turn to Him again and again. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So in conclusion, قل من يرزقكم من السماء والأرض. Who provides for you from the heaven and the earth? Remember, only Allah. There are different mediums, but Allah is the main source. And also remember, وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. When you're talking about risk and we're asking Allah to risk, and one of the names of Allah is Ar-Razzaq. When you're asking Him for risk, ask for this word and in the next word. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد. اللهم اني اعوذ بك من الهم والحزن والعجز والكسل والبخل والجبن وذل الدين وقهر الرجال. ربنا عليك توكلنا واليك نبنا واليك المصير. اللهم انا نسالك رضاك والجنه ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم انا نسالك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وشفاء من كل داء. اللهم انك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. ربنا هب لنا من ازواجنا وذرياتنا قرة اعين واجعلنا للمتقين اماما. اللهم اصلح احوال المسلمين في فلسطين. اللهم اصلح احوال المسلمين في كل مكان. اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين. اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين وذل الشرك والمشركين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We're going to be praying Salatul Istisqa right after the prayer. So as people are lining up, make sure there are no gaps. So Salatul Istisqa is prayed similar to the Eid Salah. So we'll have 7 takbirat in the first, 5 in the second. And after that there's a short khutbah. I'm trying to make it short, maybe a couple of minutes, so people can go out. We also have the second, and we'll just make some dua in the khutbah. That's it. It's prayed like Eid Salah. And we are praying it for rain, because we all need rain.
Straight line. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Again, please fill in your lines. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي ينقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر.